What's up, everyone? You hear this? I don't know if you can hear that, but today we're learning how to save pea seeds. Pea seeds are one of the simplest seeds to start with when you're thinking about saving seeds, so I figured why not do a video? I have a bunch of peas over here that I'm about to show you, and we're going to talk about a couple different methods for saving your pea seeds and really teach you the logic behind it all. So there's some conventional wisdom, and then we'll go a little deeper and talk about some of the things that you might want to consider that you can apply to saving many different types of seeds. So let's go ahead and get saving. So when it comes to saving these pea seeds, what matters is letting the pea pod fully develop. Now, the way that conventional gardening wisdom will tell you how to do this is just grow the pea on the pod, on the vine, and just let it die on the vine, which is completely perfect advice because you want the pea to fully form, and then you want it to die, dehydrate, and then you want the peas, and if you can see, you can actually see, this is very translucent, you can see these peas separated from the pod itself. So these are ready to go. Now, what's really happening there is the pea is fully developing, and then eventually the plant stops devoting so much resources to it because it's done its job. It's created a child, basically, the potential for new life. And once the plant knows that the pea pod is completely developed, it starts directing its energy elsewhere towards maybe smaller pods or new vegetative growth. So once you see that happen, in theory, you actually can just remove the pod from the vine. It's not a big deal. And what we're gonna look at here is right here, you can see the calyx. And this is basically the little structure that is surrounding where the pod attaches to the vine. Now, when you see the calyx start to kind of pull off or shear off a little bit, that's a good sign that your pea pod is about as developed as it's ever going to be. And in theory, you can either let it die on the vine like I just talked about, 3-4 weeks after first harvest, after edible harvesting date is a good time to actually just pull it off and crack it open. Or you can actually pull, if you're saving these pea seeds, you can pull them off as soon as you start to see that calyx sort of pull away and just let them dehydrate and dry out off the vine if potentially you don't want to risk any sort of cross-contamination or anything like that, or you just want to separate your saving pea pods from your eating pea pods. So let's go ahead and cut into some of these and I'll show you what you're looking for. All right, so let's go ahead and cut in. We can see we have this leathery skin. Listen to that sound. Very, very dry, which is what we're looking for. And we can see this calyx has kind of pulled away. These are all good indicators. And we can also hear, listen, we can also hear those seeds rattling around inside. These are all great indicators that we're looking at perfect conditions for peas that are ready to be saved. And so look, we've got 2 seeds in there. Maybe not the best bounty, but you know what? These are going to be good to go. You can see they're a little bit spherical, which obviously peas are that shape, but when they dehydrate, they actually aren't. And so this is a sign that these peas need a little bit more time to dry out before I can comfortably put them in my seed storage, containers or preserve them. Now I'm going to cut it open Desiree dwarf Blauwschokker right here. So this is a different type of pea, but also these have been drying a little bit longer. So I'm going to show you what the interior of this one looks like. And you can see, first of all, they're all loose, and we can see the texture and the shape. It's much less perfectly spherical, which is a sign that more evaporation has happened, more dehydration has happened, and these are a little bit further along in their drying process. Now, again, let's go ahead and show you an example of a ready pod and maybe a not so ready pod. And so let's grab this pod here. Listen, that sound is very different. It is very malleable still. It still has that leathery texture, but it's not as crunchy and dry. Now, this is a perfect example of one that's pretty much fully formed. We can see calyx again pulling away. This calyx is pulling away. So what I might do is I might not separate it from the I might not separate the peas from the edge here, but I might just cut it open and let a little bit of airflow get in there and store it like this until it does get to that leathery texture. Because if I cut this open, not only am I keeping the peas connected right there, as you can see, they're still connected to the edge of the pod, so I'm not separating them in any way, but I'm also preventing any mold growth or any sort of fungus or pathogens or anything by increasing the airflow right there. And so that is sort of the 101. And let me see if I can find another one here. Here's one that's much drier. We can hear, again, that texture. And let's go ahead and break this one open with our hands. Let's go ahead and get in there. These ones are much more readily falling off. See, it's popping out on us, right? So these ones are good to go. Now, there's still some things we need to consider when it comes to storing them after this point, but for now, that was a pretty good overview of how to determine, if a pod itself is ready to be saved. All right, so the next step is, first of all, if you're going to be planting directly from saved seed and you're not going to store these for a long period of time, then you don't really need to let these dry any further. But if you are, you need to kind of do a drop test, and that's the way that I determine if it's ready to store for the long term or if it needs to air dry a little bit longer. So basically the idea here is if we drop it, what type of sound does it make? Does it clank like a hard object, or does it kind of have a dull thud, which makes me feel that there's still some moisture in there, this is still a bit soft? These are all pretty hard. So to me, this indicates these are good for long-term saving. And just to be safe, see, listen to that one there. Listen to that one there. That's a little bit dull compared to this. A little higher pitched right there. Now this is obviously unscientific, but the principles are sound. And so I've got a bunch here. We'll do a little drop test. I got a bunch here and we're gonna save them. And so if you're going to go ahead and save them, let's go ahead and talk about how to do that. Listen everyone, it's pretty simple. Now that we've figured out how to save our pea seeds, it's time to talk about how to actually store them for the long term. So with seed storage, good rule of thumb is going to be cool, dark, dry. Now, for me, that means an area of my house doesn't get a whole lot of humidity, it is completely dark, and it doesn't heat up too much. So the lower in your house, the better. If you have a little basement or something like that, completely cool. And that's it. I hope you really enjoyed this. I'm gonna go ahead and cut open to this one. And if you want to see any more seed saving stuff from me, definitely let me know. It's something that I'm getting into. I got to admit it's not something I'd focused on a whole lot in the past, but if I've got some extra produce, a lot of the garden that I'm growing is for you guys. Obviously I like to eat from it myself, but from the comments down below and what I hear from you guys on Instagram, the podcast, the YouTube, the Facebook group, the email, all the places that I am online, I get ideas for what I want to put out there and grow for you guys as well as for myself to try to share as much as I know and as much as I'm learning about gardening and growing your own food. So until next time guys, keep growing, keep saving, and I will see you on the next video.